Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Bvi Uk. I'm here with Jerry Ferrara, QC from Ferrara Kerins. Ferrara Ferrins, that's for me. Ferrara Kerins, and Ms. Shana Smith from Smith & Associates, and Mr. Troy Christopher from JTV. And we've been discussing our relationship with the UK. Well, the current process by which we are to consult with the UK regarding the development of a new relationship. Somebody wanted, Jerry, send me a text to summarize what the consultation process is and what is a white paper. You want to know what a white paper is?
A white paper really is ultimately a policy paper that is put out by a government, which provides a framework or informs a particular type of relationship and decision making that follows. I think in broad terms, really that's what it is. And a white paper really comes about normally through a consultation process. This particular process that has been outlined is one that seems to primarily consist of representations being made by individuals via the website or in writing, and documents being either emailed or posted into the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. Policy paper, it helps to inform what policy decisions are made and what future relationship there is.
What you can and cannot do.
What you can and cannot do.
And ultimately, you may very well find in the policy paper there's legislation put in place that is rooted in those policy pronouncements.
Okay. The numbers are on the screen, so you can text us or you can call us and participate in the discussion. Okay, we got some text coming in. God bless it. I do not think that we should be forced. Coming fast and furious. Let me do this here. Cool. God bless. And I do not think that we should be forced to go backwards when the UK is so busy looking for a way forward. That's a comment. Some people, this person seem to think that we are going backwards. This consultation process, based on, I guess, what they've heard so far, that the UK wants to take us back. Well, I don't know how far back, but
definitely in a different direction. So where we were going.
So we have a different direction. We got a new government. We need to wait and see where the government is going. Let me see. Well, let me see. I don't know if I should. All right, there we go. Bob Marley warned us of this day. They come to reap what they never sow. We can't let them take over. They will take it all, then treat us with scorn. We have to chase them. That's a little rough. Excellent discussion. It seems like England have now decided to reap the corn we plant. They realize the BVI and talks have plenty good corn, so they are aggressively taking charge of the BVI and talks and Caicos. The rest they don't care about. They don't care about them. But I won't say that Cayman's got some pretty good corn too.
Both Cayman and Anguilla having their own difficulty. A lot of the overseas territories are having their difficulties with the UK relationship.
Yeah, all the territories are having, we know Anguilla had a serious problem with their budget there a few months back.
That's right. Very serious problem, and so did Cayman. Because they couldn't borrow any more money, and they asked to raise the ceiling, and it was refused at that time. And subsequently, it was approved. But when the refusal was given, it was pointed out that they needed to do certain things within Cayman in order to have that type of request considered, and one of them really was to increase taxes,
raise the revenue locally.
Raise revenue locally, but the Premier, McKeever Bush, refused
to put his foot down
to do that. He said absolutely not.
That's right. And he had to send his budget to, and it hurt him.
Yes.
I saw him on an interview. Well, actually, I saw him addressing his legislature. Mm-hmm. It hurt him to, as he quote unquote, send his budget to a clack in the UK for approval. Yeah. You know, he was upset about that. Thank you for calling Spotlight. Go ahead, please.
Yes, thank you. I think we must really be appreciative that at least Spotlight brings us information about.
Speak a little louder, please.
I think we should be thankful that you're doing a program that treats our first to know things and want to know things, but because it seems to me, even to many of my colleagues, that there seems to be an effort in the media. There's no programs are not like Spotlight. There seems to be a DVD practice being practice that is deliberately designed to live there. Because the media is just saying anything, and basically about the continent of Africa, we're so uninformed. We don't know like nothing is going on. 52 nations are the second largest continent on Earth, with over 2 billion people, including diaspora. And like nothing's happening. And the place is about ready to explode. Not only have there been revolutions going on that amounted to 52 nations declaring their independence, and I think it's the theme of what is happening with the recession, with Europe talking now about that. I'm sure you've heard about the United States of Europe. The United States of Europe, they were organized, while at the same time we're not even being informed as to what is taking place on the continent of Africa. And all hell is about ready to break loose. And that is DDD, deliberately designed dementia. And I thank you for digging into this situation where we're being told to report to other people or depend upon them to study our budget, our budgeting and what have you. It is ridiculous. It is absurd when you have places in the Middle East. Slaughter. Syria, what is it? 3,000 people dead in the last few months. The whole person pussies, as a matter of fact. 800,000 people slaughtered. And I think it's as if nothing has happened at all. We're still drinking beer, wine, and whiskey, and dancing and singing all night, and all hell is about ready to break loose.
I'm going to have to thank you for the call, caller. Thank you very much for your input. Yes. Let me see. We got another text. Let me get. Okay. Half of it is the BVI's fault. Why we are in this mess? Everyone wants to put it on the UK. It's a VIP and ultimately the people who voted them in because corruption was evident in their last administration and the people put them in. Well, that's another opinion there. Okay, we can't hear what that caller is saying. Please translate for the listening viewers. Okay, I think it'll be difficult for me to translate that as well, so we'll just leave that. But it seems as though we have some people who are looking at what is happening in not the most favorable light. It says we elected a government to the BVI. Why shouldn't our government be holding the consultative meetings and find out from the people what they want? That's another question.
Well, you know, maybe with hindsight, there could have been at least some discussion of these issues on the campaign trail. if they had been brought to the fore and made known to the people, and the various candidates had, made themselves aware of this process and what it entailed, and some of the issues that they would like to see, and the representations made as part of this consultative process. Because it strikes me now that while it might not have been the ideal way of having this kind of public consultation in the BVI, certainly one way in which you could have started that process and had some input would have been on the campaign trail. Because if candidates were aware of this process and that there was indeed a deadline, I would like to think that a lot of the candidates would have seized the opportunity to air their views on certain issues concerning the relationship between the BVI as an overseas territory and the United Kingdom. And at least that would have helped to have sensitized the public as well with regard to the process and the issues that are involved in that process. And then that could have been taken forward with the new government coming into office through a more direct method of public consultations.
Well, I think it happened so that we had so many issues of our own. And that because this came, September the 12th, I think, the 28th, and we were in the heat of battle. Thinking point poor Shana wasn't thinking about no UKP.
I'm sure Shana would have written at least one of her commentaries.
Yeah. She wasn't thinking. Yeah, she wasn't thinking about the white paper.
It's interesting.
I think you may have touched on it actually.
I did at some level, because it's something where, again, the level of understanding that we have, that the average citizen have. Because I remember seeing the governor to one of the events, and mentioning to him, I got the letter and it's something that we're gonna look at and try to submit. But I feel that there needs to be education, because the average person does not understand what these questions are really asking for. So it's almost as if you're just doing a survey just to get a feel of what's happening. But as far as getting a serious viewpoint that I can go forward now and craft a policy that will govern the country, this might not have been the best approach to have taken off the bat, and there should have been more, like you're saying, Cromwell, a push from the administration level. Even if it's something that the public service would conduct, while the ministers are on the campaign trail, that it was still done.
I think from the text and the calls that we get in tonight, we need to have this discussion among ourselves at Virgin Islanders as to what it is we want the relationship to be. Because what's happening is that we are beginning to think, and I'm afraid that this was going to happen. Hold on for a minute for me, please. We are beginning to blame ourselves for the intervention of the UK government. UK have the right to look into what is going on because the past government was mismanaging our funds for their personal gain. So there's a couple of Texans who are already talking about what we have done to bring this upon ourselves. And so it is now that this thing that the UK is doing, they have a right to do because it's justified because we ourselves can't manage ourselves.
After the caller speak, I want to make a point.
Yeah. Carla, go right ahead. You want spotlight?
Yes. I'm joining with the others that because we have a responsibility as elected when we elect people to office. We have a responsibility. If they are mismanaging, we, the people, have to rise up against them, because the government for the people, by the people. And for several years, funds have been mismanaged. Even this past government, you had a greenhouse project going on for several $1 million, and not a oak tree was planted. So, somebody needs to give an account. Somebody needs to be responsible. So, I'll leave it there. You get the message.
All right, thank you very much for that call.
But sorry, I want to make 2 points because the caller make an important point. The question for me though, and this is really at the crux of what as Virgin Islanders we have not been able to do very well. Even if there is mismanagement, which you will have, we haven't been able to get out of the planet. Even if there's mismanagement, the tools of how do you keep a government to account is what is in question. The tools available to the people. The idea that you have to march in the street to keep a government in account is what I don't think that should be the only tool available to us.
Yeah.
There has to be other tools available to the public. Make sure that there's transparency. Make sure that there's several oversight committees, oversight bodies. Make sure the information is public so that we don't find out about the information after the fact. We don't find out about the things where you hear that there was corruption but nobody can prove it. During the last problem that we were dealing with the whole Bywater issue, the media had to be the one who were doing the investigation.
Yes.
The media had to be the one who were digging up all the information and bringing the information to the public. Where you asked, you may have, people appeal to the governor to do an investigation. He didn't see the need. Maybe it was because it was a UK company. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that there wasn't an entity that had the ability to investigate it, that we controlled, that we could have said, listen, we're going to ask our own oversight committee who has some autonomy to make the government bring all this information to the public and answer all the questions that the public has. And those type of tools is what is lacking.
Yes.
But I'm going to make one last point on the texter who said the UK has a right to do it because of ABC. This word right to do it is my concern. The UK might have the authority, but a right is what we Virgin Islands are here fighting for. What the UK has, the United Nations has decided that all groups of people in all territories have a right to self-determination. That's what we have a right to. The UK doesn't have a right to it. They might have the authority, but a right is something that we are actually trying to preserve our right as a people.
And I want us to get away from the blame game, because then it goes to, is this one fault, is our fault, is, we understand where the shortfall is now, and we need to start discussing it from the standpoint of what it is needs to happen so that this does not happen again, or we don't find ourselves in a worse position. Because for some people, because some people were like, yes, it's a good thing the UK went into TCI, but when you sit down and you hear how Troy put it in place, as far as you have Auditor General, you have the governors in charge of the police, arrest who you need to arrest. You have different reserve powers in the Constitution that could have been used effectively to solve the issue, and not just basically close everything down, and as a result that country has collapsed and set itself back for probably the next 20 years.
Thank you for calling Spotlight. Go right ahead, please. Yes, go right ahead. You're on Spotlight.
I just want to say, the caller that called in earlier and said that trying to put blame on NDP VIP government. I want to say that half of what's happening right now with this whole forging of a closer relationship with the UK was a bigger plan. It was planned way ahead before this government even came here to the BVI. Because I find it kind of strange that all of a sudden, like I think Jerry was saying earlier, Troy was saying earlier, all of a sudden the BVI is doing good in some respects, and all of a sudden now we need a closer relationship. They need their department in England to work closer with our department at BVI when we've never really needed them before. So it's a bigger plan, and it's something that was already set in motion way in advance before any government could ever done anything bad to the BVI. But one of the things I would like to see going forward is I would like to see this government adopt some of the models that they have in Bahamas. For example, when it comes to local development, ownership of businesses, there used to be this talk that Bvi Islanders will have the first right to own certain business, operate certain business, to protect ourselves in the long run. Well, I don't really see that. I see where myself as a Bvi Islander is competing for simple jobs, simple businesses against outsiders with money. development, no matter what it takes. And I think if you put those kind of measures in place, no matter what the UK government does, no matter how close our relationship becomes, as long as you have things unlocked, a bywater situation will never happen again in the BVI, because no matter what you do, no matter what government comes into place, you'll always have certain business allocated for local development, as long as locals are able and capable of doing it. I say nothing to listen.
All right, thank you very much, my brother. That speaks to our maturity again as well, to have all these institutions functioning. A National Business Bureau could be one of those things, one of those institutions that he's talking about, where, you know, looking into looking into our development as a people, and all our businesses are experiencing that difficulty. It's not just ocean conversion, it's insurance, it's law firms, architectural firms, construction firms. All our firms are being attacked from outside, with companies coming in, taking advantage of opportunity that we are quite capable of taking advantage of.
I think the caller, his first point was, as well, is a very important one, where in essence he was saying that you know, this whole decision to craft a new white paper is not something that was made in the last month. It's not something that was made very recently. I think obviously this was something that was on the table or in the cards for some time. And you know, yes, we can to some extent say that, as some of the texters and callers have mentioned, that, well, look, you know, we ourselves may have been, you know, not handled things in the right way and so on. We may very well have played, so to speak, into their hands. But you have to also appreciate that the UK is not just looking at the BVI. They're looking at the 14 overseas territories. And you've had over the years varying degrees of successes, you know, a different track record. It's not always been impeccable in terms of governance and so on. There are problems that have arisen. I remember many years ago, for example, Montserrat had a problem relating to offshore banking, where there was quite a great deal of fraud involved there. So I think the decision to have this kind of consultation and ultimately to have a new white paper takes account of what has transpired in the various overseas territories and what to some extent has actually transpired in Britain itself. You know, and so I think really, as I think Shana mentioned early on, we need to recognize that it's not just a matter of the blame game, so to speak. It's really a matter now of constructive engagement. And that is what we must have. And constructive engagement starts with proper dialogue within a certain organized framework within the BVI, so that informed representations can be made either directly or through our own government. And certainly our government needs to take the lead in ensuring that this happens. And you know, I would like to hope that in the end, if most of the other overseas territories are probably in a similar position to the BVI in terms of the short period for this consultation and representations, that, you know, if you're not, if all of your overseas territories, or most of them, are saying, well, look, the time is too short, then you have to think twice about the time which you've given. And how, you know, in many instances we've seen of consultations, of public exercises where the deadline has had to be extended for good reason. And I think there's good reason here for extending the date for closing off consultation.
And there's always strength in unity. If all of the overseas territories say we need more time, I don't know what Britain going to do about that. The Premier, in his press conference following his trip, did say he would be coming to the public in the coming weeks. So it's so the Premier seems to be having his own plan to come for consultation in the coming weeks. What procedure do we take what procedure do we take in having some of these politicians, past and present, prosecuted for their illegal squandering and mismanagement of financial resources? And will the UK have to intervene in such a procedure? I think
that's one of the things that I was basically trying to speak to in terms of maturity. I know that we have said that we're not necessarily into the blame game, but I'm of the opinion that if people need to be arrested, people need to be imprisoned if they did wrong or they need some penalties, then have the penalty, hold them accountable, and let's move on with the country, because that's the way that you continue to grow and you continue to mature. And you foster transparency. But the point that I'm making is that this happens everywhere. It happens everywhere. What I don't want is, and this was my concern, so many people in the territory are asking, how do we get our politicians accountable? How can we hold them? This caller is talking about things that may have happened that they may need to be prosecuted. The mechanism is out of our hand. We don't. It's not clear on that mechanism, and it doesn't have to be that we have to go and do the investigation. There might be an oversight body that can decide that it needs to be penalized, where the information can be brought to, or the things that have happened during your administration is brought to light consistently in the public. I know in the United States they hold all of these meetings in public. It's televised. So when you know that the monies that you've spent, the things that you've done is going to be on record, the oversight committee is going to discuss them, and you are going to be called in front of that committee, and it's going to be televised, it's going to be public, then you are going to make proper decisions, and you're going to be willing to stand by those decisions, and there's going to be, and so that's maturity. And when I look at the relationship that the UK wants to have with us, I am looking for how we can mature. Because these are the same principles that they use to govern themselves. They have had the same problems with corruption. A number of administrations they've talked about in their administration who have had to resign and have been arrested, and have problems. So the question for me is not whether you are willing to see how closer you can get to my pause. The question is whether you are really interested in allowing us to have the
mature in advance
and transparency that we require.
And I think too, just to add to what Troy is saying, that we have some of these mechanisms in place, but we have a tendency to want to overlook because of who. Or who's involved, so to speak. Because again, your Attorney General is constitutional, Director of Public Prosecution constitutional. So they're not affected by the political directorate. And if people are doing their job, then things will take that next step that they need to.
Well, I was going to ask a question. Are we using what we do have effectively? The Auditor General, are we using the Auditor General effectively? Are we using the Public Accounts Committee effectively? Maybe in some of those very institutions.
We need to start enforcing the rules that we do have.
It goes back to that point I was making, where in some of the stuff where, if you listen to what the previous Premier said in his address when they asked him about the audited figures, he said that the audited reports was submitted to his ministry, but he had to make a comment on it before it could be laid on the table, or something to that effect. So in a lot of inferences, it might be that the Auditor General might be trying to have these things done. The question is, when that doesn't happen,
what's the consequence?
What's the consequence? Do we have to go and beg somebody else to,
It's just like the same thing with the stamp duty commission. We had a commission of inquiry, and then it's gone dead.
But what you need, is some law, even in the Constitution. And the Constitution does speak to the Auditor General, and I'll have to revisit the provisions. But I remember during the constitutional exercise, there was some discussion about this, that you have these reports. and the tabling of those reports in the Legislative Council at that time, now the House of Assembly, could be delayed and so on and so forth, because you need a minister to actually table the report in the House, right? And so you need a constitutional provision or some provision in the law that says that once those reports are ready, they must be tabled in the House within a specified period of time. So you ensure that they get there. And as far as the Public Accounts Committee is concerned, that's a very important constitutional body in terms of oversight and accountability and transparency. But one of the difficulties, I think, with the in the previous 4 years, that you had an opposition that only consisted of 2 members. The Public Accounts Committee consists of 5 members, normally 3 from the opposition and 2 from the government side. But you have a situation where you only had 2 members of the opposition, so effectively the opposition members were in the minority in relation to the Public Accounts Committee. And that really undermines the functionality, it seems to me, of the Public Accounts Committee. But that is something that we need to look at, and we need to look at procedures in the House. We need to look at the rules and regulations in terms of how these committees function. We need to see whether there are not other committees, oversight committees, as you mentioned, Troy, that we need to provide for in the Constitution, and give a certain level of protection to those committees in terms of the discharge of their duties and functions.
Constitutional, go ahead. Constitutional discussion is off the table. Go ahead.
It's the same. Going back to the same point that Jerry was making in terms of the which committee? Because I want the 2 members. The Public Accounts Committee. Yeah. If you look at some of the comments that were made, that the Public Accounts Committee functions are for these audited reports, which none exist. So,
so even if they could convene, what do we discuss?
Finally, 3 o'clock. One last thing. So what British identity, Britishness do you think the UK is expecting of us in this day and age? The transatlantic slave trade, the plantation era, or abandonment after Emancipation Proclamation? That's serious text right there. Yeah, that's it. I got 3 more, but I can't get to them. Yes, great discussion. I think we're going to wait to see what the Premier have in store for us, what he's going to do. Is he going to say to the UK, listen, we don't have enough time, we need to go and consult with our people to find out what we want, or he going to cave in to the UK high-handedness? So we have to wait and see. I guess we should be hearing from the Premier pretty soon about what we're going to do. But certainly, I think we need to have a discussion among ourselves as to what we're going to do.
I think this would be my wrap-up point, since we're under 3 o'clock, that everybody takes this very seriously as far as what it is we're talking about embarking on, and hold the Premier accountable. That, I believe the position, the majority public opinion on this would be that we need to have proper consultation, and that he stand his ground, and that the people unite behind of that this is what it is we're gonna do. We're gonna take our time, sit down, make sure we take the opportunity as a teachable moment, and get everybody on the same page, because that, I think, is very important for us to move forward in any relationship, partnership with the UK government going forward. So, this is one of those points where we could hold him accountable and say, Mr. Premier, we need to do this thing properly.
Good. Jerry?
Well, I would like to think that we are going to get that sort of leadership from the Premier. I think especially as a new government having just, gotten into power, the ink hasn't really dried on the appointments and swearing in process and so on, and it's an important issue. It's a large issue. It's difficult for any government in such a short period of time to effectively formulate the views and so on of his people and make representations on their behalf. So I hold out two hopes tonight, really. One is that the present government under the leadership of the Premier will ensure that there is a consultation process with the public in the BVI and in order to formulate our views and representations. And I also hold out some hope that the British government will see the wisdom of extending the deadline for the consultation process to end. And will perhaps give it at least another 6 months in the new year. I would like to see that.
That would be a good try.
Well, my hope is that it shouldn't necessarily take some of these consultations or these opportunities for us as citizens or the Bvi as a territory to discuss these serious issues that we have as a road forward. I am really hoping that as a territory we can try to mature some more and have these discussions on the road forward. We are very good at saying what we don't want, but saying what we want, carving out our identity going forward, what we want, what type of world we want to live in. We don't have those discussions very, very often. And realizing that with maturity and responsibility comes mechanisms that we can create to police ourselves. A lot of times we feel that, thank God we have somebody to turn to bail us out of a situation. But we'll often find that when the person bails us out of the situation, it is for their interests and for their advantage. And so that's something that I'm encouraging Virgin Islanders to look at, to discuss, take these issues seriously, and let's try to continue to grow. We have a rich legacy of mature politicians and mature trailblazers who have gone before us, who have tried to carve out a great history for us. And so let's live up to our own responsibility and take our responsibility seriously and move forward.
And certainly the spotlight is going to have to be shining on some of these issues in the year 2012. Yes. Thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Shayna. Thank you, Troy, for being my guest on Spotlight and for really giving us a great discussion this evening. This is the last live Spotlight for the year. You can log on to jtvlive.net and catch up with all the other spotlights that you missed. Spotlight will be back live on January 10th, I think, 2012, God's willing, at 8 p.m. right here on JTV Channel 55. On behalf of the JTV Spotlight crew, I wish you a joyful holiday season and a healthy year ahead. Thanks again for your words of encouragement, for your criticism, your suggestions. Continue to email me at jtvspotlight@yahoo.com. I'm Ejuenka, reminding you that when the spotlight is on, you surely see the facts. Peace and blessings until 2012. All the best.
This program is sponsored by the law firm of J.S. Archibald & Co. and by the trust company J.S. Archibald Trust Services Limited, both of Roadtown, Tortola, BVI.